I've been shooting sports professionally for about a decade, and before that, I got my start shooting concerts and festivals in pitch black environments. My entire photography and video production career has involved working with terrible lighting, and no, as you're going to see in this video, I didn't always have great gear to help me out. Shooting in these conditions for close to 15 years has taught me the secrets of high ISO photography, and in this video, I'm going to break down 5 techniques that will instantly improve your work. Now, these secrets are going to be delivered in a process of elimination format. Just keep watching until you find the best option for your situation. Or better yet, combine as many of the suggestions I'm going to make in this video for the best possible results. And if you like this video and you want to learn more about photography in an efficient and an effective way, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I promise that none of my content will waste your time and I get straight to the point. Jumping right in, the first technique and the quickest way to improve your high ISO photography is to get yourself a full frame camera. A full frame camera is a camera with a sensor size equivalent to 35mm film, which offers better performance in low light due to the larger sensor area. In contrast, crop sensors are significantly smaller, they're more compact and affordable, but the trade-off is that you lose image quality when you crank up your ISO because the sensor isn't big enough to gather the same amount of light. Now, I swear that I'm not telling you this because I want you to spend more money on camera gear. It truly just comes down to physics, and you can't cheat physics. Think of your camera sensor as if it were a solar panel. If you put a bigger and a smaller solar panel side by side, you would expect that the bigger panel will gather more sunlight and convert it into electricity. You can try to make the smaller panel better or more efficient, but it will always have to work harder in order to accomplish the same thing. Similarly, if you expose a full frame sensor to the same amount of light as a crop sensor, the full frame sensor will always gather more light, no matter how far crop sensor technology evolves. Back in 2013, I tried shooting a bunch of DJs at a major festival with the Canon T3i, and needless to say, my work looked absolutely terrible at night. My crop sensor camera just didn't cut it, so I ended up with mushy blobs that looked like this. Now fast forward a year, I had been working long enough to justify upgrading to a full frame camera, and then I immediately started shooting footage which looked like this. The difference in quality was massive. Like I said, you can't cheat physics in low light environments. But if a full frame camera isn't an option for you, then move on to the next technique, which is to shoot with the fastest possible lens. Now the logic here is pretty much the exact same as the logic behind using a full frame camera. If you use a faster lens with a lower f-stop, you will be able to pass more light through the barrel to your sensor. Again, I'm not just suggesting you spend money here for the sake of spending money. I'm actually trying to get you to think about your f-stop. Now, f-stop is a measurement of the aperture size in a lens, with lower numbers indicating a larger aperture that allows more light to reach the camera sensor, and higher numbers indicating a smaller aperture that reduces the amount of light entering. And many entry-level camera lenses will have what is known as a variable aperture, meaning that it changes as you zoom in or out. So for example, let's say that you're using the 18 to 45mm kit lens that came with your Canon camera. That lens has a variable aperture of f4.5 to f6.3, which means that if you shoot at the wider end of the lens, so 18mm, you will be letting more light into the camera at f4.5 than if you shoot at 45mm and f6.3. This alone can massively improve the quality of your low light photography. Of course, if you do have the money to upgrade your lens, not saying that can't help either. Faster lenses are typically bigger, they're heavier, and of course they're more expensive, but you will see a drastic improvement in the quality of your pictures. Back in 2015, I had my full frame camera and I was trying to shoot sports with a 70 to 200mm f4 lens and a 1.4x extender. This meant that my f-stop was hitting 5.6 while I tried to shoot action at night on the other end of the field. Let's be honest, I can admit it, this doesn't look great. Again, let's fast forward a year. I had been shooting enough sports to justify upgrading my Canon 70 to 200 f4 to an f2.8, and just have a look at the difference. Same camera, except now instead of shooting at f5.6, I was shooting at f2.8, which enabled me to drop my ISO all the way down to ISO 6400. Lots of detail you can see here in this team jersey that wasn't ever visible before, so again, massive difference in quality. So I recognize that the first 2 steps that I mentioned potentially involve spending money, and not all of you want to watch a YouTube video just to be told you need to spend more money. So the remainder of what I'm going to talk about will involve using your existing equipment. So the third technique is to shoot at the slowest possible shutter speed that your subjects will allow. This is by far the most effective way to improve the quality of your work in low light without spending a single penny, but it usually only works when dealing with inanimate objects. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, let's think back to those same simple physics we talked about with full frame cameras. Decreasing the shutter speed on your camera means that the shutter stays open for longer, allowing more light to hit the sensor. And this longer exposure time gives the sensor ample opportunity to absorb the existing light, which of course is helpful when shooting in low light. But the reason that this will only work with inanimate objects is because a longer exposure time will capture any movement in the frame as a blur. So back in 2021, I took this shot of a near pitch black memorial at night with my ISO set to 25,600 and my shutter speed set to 1/15th of a second. Big surprise, picture quality is terrible. So I reduced my ISO down to 800 and you can see the noise is now gone, but I can barely see anything in the frame. So then I put my camera on a tripod and I took this picture, but my shutter speed was set to 30 seconds. Now that's more like it. A very crisp, sharp picture with details in the sky that I could never make out before. And truly, you can do this without needing expensive gear. I did the exact same thing with my iPhone a few weeks later, as you can see here, and the results were just as good. Keep in mind that there are a lot of different steps that go into this type of long exposure photography, keeping your camera steady, using a remote trigger. If you want to learn some of that in more detail, you may want to check out the description below for the ultimate online photography school, Speedy Photographer, where you can join hundreds of my students in learning faster than you ever will by scrolling through YouTube. Now, if slowing down your shutter speed isn't an option, then the fourth technique is to add more light to your composition. And yes, this actually can be done without spending money on equipment, but let me just show you a basic example with some equipment first. The first example here was taken at ISO 12,800. All of my lighting equipment is turned off, which leaves me with only the ugly ceiling lamp. Lots of noise visible here when we zoom in. But now this second picture was taken at ISO 800. All of my lighting equipment is now turned on, overpowering the ugly ceiling lamp and allowing me to shoot at a much lower ISO, which, as we know, improves the quality of my picture. Pretty straightforward. But let's talk about the real challenge here. What if you can't bring any lighting equipment? For example, outdoor sports at night. One of my favorite strategies that I've developed over the years is to find what I call the hot spot. Anytime you shoot under artificial lighting, there is usually a hot spot somewhere where the lighting will appear to be brighter because it's either more direct or it's closer to the subject. These two pictures were taken during the exact same soccer game. The first one was taken at ISO 6400 and the second one was taken at ISO 25,600. How is this possible? Because the lighting on the pitch was very uneven. You can legitimately see some of these darker areas in the background, but I waited for my subject to enter a hot spot where I knew that the light was going to be much more direct. And as a result, this shot looks extremely sharp and crisp. On to the final technique. You've upgraded your camera, you've upgraded your lens, you dropped your shutter speed, and you brought in lighting equipment or you found the hot spot. Now what do you do? If all of these things have been attempted, then the fifth and the final technique is to post-process your images. I'm not even that old, but post-processing has come a long way from when I first started shooting back in 2009. Back then, the only real option was to use the denoise sliders in Lightroom to try and reduce some of that grain in your pictures. And this produced some pretty decent results if you fiddled with those sliders enough, but we now have built-in AI denoise software in Lightroom, and we have tools like Topaz Photo AI at our disposal. Affiliate links in the description below. I took this picture in 2018 with a Canon 5D Mark IV at ISO 25,600. The stadium was very dark and the grain in this shot completely ruined the picture, but I was forced to deliver it to my client because it was an important trophy presentation. So I did my best with the luminance and the color noise reduction sliders, but you can see that the noise is still pretty noticeable. But now have a look at what Denoise AI can do here. When we compare these two pictures side by side, we can see that Denoise AI retains almost all of the detail in the facial features while doing a better job of noise reduction. And as a photographer, this opens the door to using much more affordable camera gear without having to worry so much about low light performance. The only thing to keep in mind is the processing time. Denoise AI tools can take anywhere from 15 seconds to several minutes of processing time for each picture, so this isn't really an option if you're working in a newsroom and you need to deliver pictures quickly. It only works if you aren't in a pinch when it comes to time. So there you have it, 5 different techniques to deal with shooting at higher ISOs. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you want to learn how I took beautiful pictures in low light conditions like these ones by combining lighting, color, composition, and my blueprint to great pictures, be sure to check out my online photography school, Speedy Photographer. This is the ultimate online photography school with the easiest, simplest tutorials that can teach you how to take stunning pictures that can impress all of your friends and family, and you don't have to be an advanced professional with all of this special gear to do it, and I talk about all of that inside the course. Here's one student who started by taking pictures that looked like this and eventually began taking pictures like this while also making money doing it, so be sure to check that out if you're interested, link in the description below. Last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more high value content just like this, and I'll see you in the next video.